Welcome to The Decision from Nashville EO, where you will hear the rest of the story after tough decisions were made by entrepreneurs who faced adversity and lived to tell about it.
Hi, Robert Hartline here with The Decision, EO Nashville's podcast to help entrepreneurs navigate their entrepreneurial journey. And today, Dean Wegner is here to share his energy with us. How are you?
Robert, I'm doing fantastic. Looking forward to a wonderful discussion.
Yes. So, listen, I have always admired bravery in you and what you've built with an apparel brand. And I'd like to start off with getting to know the Dean before the entrepreneur, Dean. Who was Dean?
Well, I think let me start here, Robert, and just share kind of foundationally who I am. I tell everybody I'm a veteran and an entrepreneur, and priorities for me in life align with God, family, country. And very intentionally in that order, my Christian faith is first and foremost, and then family. Incredibly important to me. So this year, my wife, Kelly, and I will celebrate 30 years.
Wow.
And I'm a lot to put up with. So she's a saint. And, we have 4 amazing kids. We have 2 daughters, 25 and 22. We have a 19-year-old son, and we have a 13-year-old son we adopted from Ethiopia. So family is incredibly important to me. And then love of country, that really started out at West Point. Spent 4 years there and had an incredible experience. Graduated in 1993, went to flight school, learned how to fly helicopters. Had a unique opportunity after flight school, went to the Army Special Forces Ranger School, which is another story on how that ties to, leading a startup, and then served 7 years. And that's really the foundation of who I am. And then a longer story on the whole professional journey, ultimately to become an entrepreneur.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And, I think about like hard things. Mm-hmm. And then I think about someone that's in Ranger School. I'm like, okay, I don't really know what hard things are. So what was that like, just actually going through the program or even getting selected?
So it's almost ties back to your senior year, your first year at West Point, and you choose which branch you're going to select. And they were 18 different options, Robert, and I had no idea there were that many. There's infantry, armor with tanks and field artillery, all these combat arms. Then there's also a lot of combat support, whether it's finance, transportation, logistics. And I had narrowed it down to 2 choices. I thought infantry, that's the heart and soul of the Army on that side. And if you want to be a general in the Army, that's probably the best path to go. But one of my favorite movies growing up was Top Gun.
Of course.
And I thought I would look ultra cool in a flight suit, and ultimately went the aviation route. But, at flight school, I kept wondering if I made the right choice. And it was interesting because on one side of the Army is the flight suit wearing aviator. On the opposite side is, Special Forces, Rangers, that side. And the flight school commander made an announcement and said, once in a lifetime opportunity, we're going to have a competition and send one of you to Ranger School. And I thought, Robert, here's my chance to see how, what the other half is living. And I was very fortunate. I won that competition and found out just how miserable it was in Ranger School. And, to give you an idea, I didn't know back then, but it was great training for leading a startup. No sleep and incredible stress. And that's the life I've been living as an entrepreneur. And just to give you a little more granular detail on what we went through, you wanted to say, well, what was it like? So on day 1, there were 340 of us. And if you make it straight through in 72 days, you live on 1 meal a day and 2 to 3 hours sleep a night. And then they put you in incredibly stressful situations. And we lost 80% of our class. 340 on day 1, after 72 days, there were only 70 of us left on graduation day. And I think there's a whole test in adversity and, whole personal limits, but probably the biggest lesson I learned is that life can be hard. Life can be difficult, and don't go it alone. Because one of the primary reasons I made it straight through, I had no business being there, being a flight suit wearing aviator, being the Special Forces Ranger School. But back then, Roy Backey was Marine Corps Infantry Sergeant Roy Backey. He was my Ranger buddy. And your Ranger buddy is instructed to have your back, have your side, always be there for you. And it is so neat because 30 years later, we still keep in touch.
Wow.
So I think the lesson is, Robert, if you got something in life, something difficult, find that Ranger buddy in life to go there with you.
Wow. So leaving the military, did you know you wanted to get in entrepreneurship?
I'm laughing, Robert, because, I said up front, I'm a veteran and an entrepreneur, but when I left the Army in 2000, I couldn't even spell entrepreneur. I
still struggle with it today, but go ahead.
Thank goodness for spell check.
Yes.
But I had no idea this world existed, and reason being, I had an amazing dad growing up, and he worked for 30 years for a Fortune 500 company. And that's what all his friends, that's what all of our neighbors did, is work for big companies. So that's the only world I knew. So I worked for Procter & Gamble and Mars, brands like Crest and Tide and M&M's, and so thankful for that experience because they're both just world-class marketing and branding companies, and I learned a ton. But P&G, for perspective, is an $80 billion company. And I had some fairly big jobs and was very well paid, but at one point I realized that I'm just a cog in the wheel. And what really drives me is knowing that I'm making a difference. And I really struggle with if I'm truly making a difference, if I'm not replaceable. And that was that initial catalyst to become an entrepreneur, was that drive to want to make a difference.
Well, what was your first business?
Well, it's funny, back to, not being able to spell entrepreneur, I didn't think I had it in me to start a business from scratch.
You can do Ranger School. You just can't do entrepreneurship.
I think it's part of the whole learning process. But I thought, you know what? I have no idea how I would start a business. I have no idea what it would be. And, I actually entered the entrepreneurial ranks through acquisition and bought my first business in 2012. And it's a business, Robert, you never would have heard of. But if you've been to a Preds game, you've been to a Titans game, and the national anthem, and seen those fancy dress uniforms that the military wears, that was the business I bought. A government contractor that produced dress uniforms for the military. So we produce thousands of uniforms every week for Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And one thing I learned was the tragic history of the apparel industry, which, to give you an idea how rare American made is, when I graduated from West Point in 93, over 50% was made in the U.S. Today it's 3%. 3% is all that was made here. And was rather naive back then and didn't really understand the whole government contracting industry, because my initial thought was, I want to win more contracts, and I thought we'll create more jobs. But I realized as a government contractor, it's more of a bidding process, and you don't actually create jobs. So Robert, if you and I are bidding on a contract, you had it before and I won. In essence, your job's transferred to me, and there's no real job creation. And that was that light bulb moment for me that said, what if instead of being a government contractor, what if we built a brand? And I thought back to the days of Crest and Tide and M&M's. And I also thought, what if instead of what 97% of brands do and chase cheap labor overseas, what if we made the intentional choice to produce right here in the US? And that's where it started in 2017, from a blank sheet of paper with a vision to build this iconic American brand. And I'm exhausted. It has been the most hard, challenging thing I've ever done. There's been a lot of flashbacks to Ranger School, but I think, we're fortunate to be part of EO Nashville, and, what is it, up over 350 now? Over 350 members of EO, and that's what I love being a part of it, because every entrepreneur has a unique story and just the passion and the energy and the belief in what they're doing, because that's what I have now. As exhausted as I am, I'm even more energized because I truly believe in the heart of our mission about creating American jobs and have an opportunity to leave a legacy by creating this iconic American brand.
And did you, when you first acquired the company, were you spending time and energy trying to win contracts?
Oh, absolutely.
And you just had this aha moment that, gosh, this is not the path.
That's not the path.
That had to have been a big decision for you, because I could see that, here you are, you acquired this thing, and then that was a big transition for you to make, wasn't it?
It was a huge transition. And, I think part of what I didn't realize and what I underestimated is when you work for a big company like Procter & Gamble, when you work for a big company like Mars, all the infrastructure, all the resources, the supply chain, the systems, the process, finance, cash flow, everything's already there. And how do you leverage that existing foundation? part of what the exhaustion has been the last 6 years. I mean, it was a blank sheet of paper, and we've been building everything from the ground up. And I think I underestimated how difficult that was going to be. I underestimated the ultra competitive nature of the apparel industry. But I know you and I have talked before, and I've talked to so many EO Nashville members. I mean, when you truly believe in what you're doing, when you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had a conversation the other day about the feeling you can have when you are doing your purpose.
Oh yeah,
and it's a undeniable level of energy that nobody can compete with that. You know, when you're living that, when you're doing that, and time does not exist, and you're just so focused on, and it just magnetizes people to you, and it's already magnetized people out of your just patriotism. Number one, your love of country. I mean, that's going to draw someone's checkbook out and say, yeah, I'm not, I'm buying this for America, and I'm not buying it, for myself. There's a different mentality I could see people would resonate with.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that, I think back to West Point and, raising my right hand to commit to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. That was that higher sense of purpose, that higher calling. And we're a for-profit business, but if you go to our website, you will read that the heart of our mission is our passion for creating American jobs. We just happen to be in the apparel business. And, you struck it right there. I mean, when you've got something that really drives you, something that you believe in, I mean, that's kind of like that autopilot that you just get on it and go, and you get in that zone.
I grew up in an army base in Germany.
Okay.
And I graduated high school in 93, and my dad happened to be a music teacher on the army base. And I had a unique experience because we had one television station, Armed Forces Network.
AFN.
AFN. Uh-huh. And what was remarkable about that experience is when you would watch TV, if there was going to be a commercial, they would cut the commercial, and it was a public service announcement.
Oh, yeah.
And all the public service announcements were, don't shop when you're hungry. No, no, no. Don't drink and drive. Mm-hmm. Loose lips sink ships. All these foundational, good things to know and live your life around. And then, on base at 5, when you would hear taps on, and it was all part of really, you were constantly fed patriotism.
Oh yeah.
And how powerful that is to me today. It's so profound to me. It's I wish that was still here, and it is still here for some of us, right?
Oh, yeah. That's part of what we want to bring back, and bring that sense of patriotism back, and that pride in American manufacturing, the pride in knowing that the shirt you put on your back was made by American workers.
So tell me about this. How did you first hear about EO?
I'm trying to think back, Robert, how I did hear about EO, because I saw the value of being in a peer CEO group, and had a friend that, had me join TAB, which is the alternative board. It's like a Vistage, like a YPO, so very similar. And I enjoyed that. It was a great experience, and, longer story, but ultimately, some friends introduced me to EO. And TAB was, it was a great program, but one of the things I love is, the size and scale of EO. So one, when you hear so many incredible, inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and, their passion, their motivation, and what drove them to be, an entrepreneur, I think that was one of the big motivations for me. The other one, I mentioned my wife, Kelly. One thing I love about EO is spouses are not only invited, but encouraged to attend events, because before, Kelly would feel like there was the home that she was a part of, that we were both a part of, but then there was this whole separate entrepreneurial business side that she wasn't a part of. So now, she comes to a lot of EO events, and she'll meet entrepreneurs like you, Robert, and she knows that I'm still crazy, but she's like, there's other people like you
that are also crazy.
They're crazy as well. So now she feels a little more connected to that world. So
is she in spousal form?
She is not in spousal form with 4 kids. Super busy there. And then, she's also leading women's ministry at our church. So she's super busy, but, just the level of connectivity and meeting other spouses and other entrepreneurs, I think she just feels much more connected to, this part of our world.
So how have you changed by being in EO?
I think I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs say, what, it can be lonely. You can be an island unto yourself, and that's the sense of community. We talked about the bigger sense of community, the 350 members we have when there's these big events, these big training opportunities, when the social events. I mean, that is wonderful. But I think what it really brings it all together is when you get that smaller, more intimate group, that forum that you're a part of.
Mm. So navigating EO in your forum, usually there's in all forum experiences, you have an opportunity to do what we call the deep dive, also called a presentation. And that's often a place where you come to forum with a big challenge, a big obstacle that you're facing, and you're like, I don't know what direction to make. What do you guys feel? And we share with experience to help us navigate those key decisions. Is there a decision that you struggled with that you maybe brought to forum you can talk about?
I'm laughing and excited to have the opportunity because I'll set you in the world where I was in 2017, which, to get you grounded, the apparel industry is a massive $300 billion industry. Every year, Americans spend $300 billion. And Robert, you woke up, put on a shirt this morning, so did Aaron, and I thought, unless you live in a nudist colony, you're a target customer of ours. Everybody, every day, makes that choice on what shirt. And I have to tell you, that lack of focus, did not work well. And, part of the deep dive that we started talking about with me was the whole marketing plan. And there was a question, well, who is your target customer? I'm like, well, everybody. Everybody puts on
clearly.
A shirt. And if you remember that, movie Karate Kid, one of the lines, your focus, need more focus. And that was really at the heart. We didn't have that target customer. And, we've ultimately, turned that whole paradigm from trying to be all things to all people to my new mantra is the riches are in the niches. Because as they started, digging deep and asking questions, like, where does your brand really resonate? One of the areas that we found, Robert, where our brand is really loved and adored is with the veteran. And had thought about veteran early on, but I thought, what? Veteran's too small. Only 1% serve, and then a much smaller subset of that veteran community owns businesses, because we do custom polos, t-shirts, socks for businesses and charities. And I thought, if veterans are focused, that's too small. So I think one lesson learned was, knowing who your target customer is, but then also doing the due diligence, because as we dug in, found some astonishing numbers. There's 400,000 veteran-owned businesses with 10 or more employees, 40,000 veteran-focused charities, and we're working with hundreds and hundreds of customers. But you start to do the quick math, you realize that we're working with less than 1% of our target market. So huge, huge upside. And when you're not trying to be all things to all people and you get very laser focused on who your target customer is, that whole less is more, the synergies and everything really start to take place. And that was a, fundamental, shift in our business and our philosophy and everything, from all things to all people to the riches are the niches. And, our business is really taken off now because we know who our target customer is. I was just out in San Diego yesterday, and I was there for a veteran business owners conference. There were about 75 people there. We'll pick up 10 or 15 new clients from that because I have an opportunity to speak and share our story. Then we'll have product there. People can see and feel and touch how amazing our American-made product is. And when you're focused on that right target customer, that sales cycle goes from forever long to very short.
Wow. Now, in your deep dive experiences and whatnot, what are some tips that you've seen in practice that has been really useful for helping you shape how you can make decisions after a presentation?
Well, I think there's two things, Robert. One is you have to do the research. You have to do the data. You have to understand the numbers, what we did. But then you also have to, test it out and prove it out and say, okay, the numbers tell us one thing, but is that actually how it plays out? And I'll tell a quick story which really reinforced the power of focusing on the veteran community. Are you familiar with Tunnel to Towers, that charity? So let me give you the quick backstory and make sure you and everyone has it, because Tunnel to Towers was birthed out of 9/11. And Stephen Stiller was an incredibly brave fireman, and he happened to be off duty on 9/11. He heard everything going down on the radio, and he was trying to get back into the city to help, and he couldn't drive back in. He put on 60 pounds of fireman gear, and ran 5 miles back to the tower and saved countless people's lives, but tragically in the process lost his life. And for years, it was a group of firemen sitting around a card table, and they'd have a 5-mile run every year in his honor. And about 10, 15 years ago, they got serious, and they're now an incredible $200 million charity. And what they do, Robert, is if you are a police officer, for example, you lose your life in the line of duty, they will pay off your mortgage so that your family never has to worry again where they're going to live. I mean, it's incredible, the story behind Tunnel to Towers, and then the impact they're having with all these veterans and first responders. But here's how it ties to our business, because I got introduced to their chief marketing officer, Larry Olson. And our tagline back to that 3% is, where's yours made? It's designed to be provocative, like, hey, Robert, great looking polo, where's yours made? And most people look at me and like, well, Dean, I have no idea. And Larry and I were getting acquainted, and I just asked him, well, Larry, where are you getting everything right now? He's like, well, I'm not sure. That's I have my team that does that, but let me go grab a few things. And he came out. And he's like, I can't believe it, Dean. Everything's made in China, made in Bangladesh. And he said, you know what? I want to do a fairly sizable test order. So they ordered polos, T-shirts, socks, hoodies, a big assortment. And about 2 months later, Robert, he called me up and he said, Dean, everybody absolutely loves it. The product's amazing. I mean, there's a little extra, esprit de corps and just excitement knowing that it's now American made. So we're going to start working through all of our inventory and switch everything over to you guys. And they're now one of our largest customers. But Larry called me last Christmas and he said, Dean, you won't believe what I got in the mail. A proud veteran donated at their monthly minimum level. So we sent him one of our hats. And he opened up that package, saw a made in China tag. He cut it in shreds and sent it back to me with one note that said, shame on you. Shame on you. And Larry said, that's why, Dean, we're partnering with you, because we serve veterans, we serve first responders, and they deserve American made.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's incredible.
So powerful story that reinforced, okay, the numbers are there. There's 40,000, but does that really play out?
And you got to walk the walk. You got to, stay focused on that energy with that audience of people and to drum those opportunities up. And how do you find many opportunities to do because you do a lot of speaking. So how do you find those opportunities like that?
So I think a lot of the speaking has not only been, keynote speeches and speaking engagements, but it's funny thinking back to the days at P&G and Mars. I mean, those days with brands like M&M's and Snickers, Robert, we literally had Super Bowl ad budgets. My marketing budget, since I'm funding it myself, is about this big.
I know, yeah.
And, thinking back to the whole playbook in those days, one of the things we thought, although we don't have a big, massive marketing budget, one thing we do have is this feel-good American story. We're veteran-owned, we're American-made, we're creating American jobs. So the idea was to play the whole earned media card. And, it was incredible, the first experience, and it's fun to think back how it came, because one of the things I believe in is the importance of it's not what you know, it's who you know, and investing in relationships. And this goes all the way back to 2018. And this was our very first national TV appearance, because after a year of being in business, I thought, okay, we're going to try and get as much earned media, free press, and PR as we can. So I told everybody we knew. I told all of our suppliers, I told all of our customers, I told friends, family, everybody. And I thought maybe a year later, we may have an opportunity. 2 months later, Robert, one of the producers at Fox and Friends called me up and said, hey, one of your suppliers gave a heads up about your story, and we'd love to have you on around 9/11. We think it's just an incredible story about creating American jobs and what you're doing for our veterans. And I literally like fell out of my chair. I'm like, there's 2 million people a day tune in, to Fox and Friends, and, I've spoke a lot of events, but never in front of 2 million people. And you can imagine the level of anxiety and nervousness. I mean, thinking like, what if I screw it up?
How do you prep for that?
Well,
from moment to discovery that you're going to be on the air, how long did you have?
So we had 45 days.
Oh, wow.
So they planned it out a little further because that actually made it nice. And, back to investing in relationships, one of our investors, I don't know if you're a NASCAR fan, but people who are NASCAR fans have heard the name Old DW, Darrell Waltrip.
Mm.
So he's not only a NASCAR Hall of Famer, but he's a Hall of Fame broadcaster. And I thought, if I'm going to be on national TV, I don't want to screw it up. So back to the whole Ranger Buddy lesson, I called up Old DW and I said, DW, would you be willing to make a trip with me to New York City? And he said, Dean, you just say when the flight's taking off and I will be there. So it was nice to have an old pro who spent, nearly 20 years in the broadcast booth. And it didn't go perfect because, I also, hired a consultant to help me, a PR person. So it didn't go perfect, but it went fairly well, and invested in relationships. And it's amazing because that was the very first one. And this was pre-COVID. It was in studio. We invested in some relationships. So that opened the doors to other opportunities. And it's incredible. I don't often share this, but, we've been on national TV now over 20 times. And I think the one part is you invest in relationships, you get to know people, and then passion. We talked earlier about passion. After that first appearance, we had an opportunity, Old DW and I, to sit backstage with the host. And one of the hosts, Robert, said, Dean, you actually believe this, don't you?
Oh, wow.
And I said, I absolutely do. They're like,
they see through bullshit all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
They're like, we can just tell. And the whole lesson I learned there was passion is contagious.
Oh,
you
it's
truly believe in what you're doing. It's
powerful energy. It's magnetic energy. Like, you can fire someone up with just your spirit and just you being you. And like getting you to be you, like, is a challenge for lots of people to become truly yourself. Like, have you always been able to be like truly yourself, or was there a version of you that maybe had a mask on?
I think there's been, I hate to admit it, but too often a mask. Like, okay, I was rather shy, rather reserved growing up as a kid, and you're trying to break out of that mold and that mask on. But I think now when you find your passion in life, you find what you truly find significance and meaning in. I mean, that's where a lot of that just goes to the wayside. And people like, Dean, the story, I mean, is powerful. It's impactful. And Robert, it's been the same story I've been telling for 6 years. I mean, we shifted our focus on who our target customers that we talked about, but the passion and the love for our country, the passion, love, and wanting to serve our American heroes, to want to create American jobs. I mean, that's been the same since day one.
Mm. Now, when you do an appearance like that, how quick do you see, like, I guess, the sales change dramatically? Like, what, I just imagine, are you like looking at your phone and seeing all the orders come in? I mean, what happens? Did you think more? I mean, what happens?
Well, let me share 2 examples of that, because, people who are in the e-commerce space are familiar with Shopify, and that's our e-commerce platform. So it's literally like a game. You can literally watch it live. And when we are on national TV and 2 million people, it's like an earthquake hit, like instantaneously. It's like a spike in traffic, and people are, browsing your website. They're making purchases. So, that's one impact. And remind me to tell you about, one other story, appearance later, about, how it drove sales. But I think the other example is a new brand in such an ultra competitive apparel industry. I think what the national TV appearance also did was give credibility. Because a lot of people are like, well, Dean, great story, but I've never heard of you. Like, how do I even believe that you are for real, that you're a real brand, that you got real product? And then we say, well, here's our story. And hey, we're very fortunate. We're blessed to have this national appearance. They're like, wow, you guys are legit. I mean, you've been on national TV. And that's been, I think, twofold. One, you did get a nice bump in sales, but just the, overall brand halo and the credibility of being on national TV.
Mm. Mm. So the moral of the story is get on TV.
If you can, it's a huge help. But let me tie back one more thing, because it ties a number of things together around investing in relationships and being an evangelist for your story. Because that first appearance, it was in studio. So I met a number of people, and one of the gentlemen I met was Pete Hegseth. And you may not know Pete, but Pete's a fellow Army veteran, and he's the host of Fox and Friends Weekend. So being a consumer brand, we also brought some product and samples. So I gave Pete a pair of our fun patriotic socks. And about a year later, Robert was invited back, and Pete was interviewing me. And saw Pete in studio. He's like, "Hey, Dean, so great to see you again. I'm excited to interview you this time. And I still have the socks you gave me. They're my favorite pair."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Pete, please say that on national TV." And he did. And it was like that earthquake that hit. And Robert, I actually love what he said, because he didn't say anything about them being American made. He said they're so soft, so comfortable. They have this fun patriotic design. And I should have brought a sample, because if you read the fine print after you have an experience like that, you want to learn more. And the fine print on the packaging says designed in Nashville and made in North Carolina. And we have 11 states that we have manufacturing. And what's fun about socks is I joke that nobody wears ties anymore. Socks are the new ties. So we have done hundreds of custom designs. Our customers use them for employee gifts, just as a fun way to go ahead and build employee morale. Our customers also use them for client gifts, just as a fun way to go ahead and thank your clients and give them a fun gift. But I think it reinforced for me comments from Pete there that the veteran-owned, the American-made, creating American jobs is important, but we're a consumer brand, and we have to deliver that wow product experience. And when Pete said that, it crystallized in my mind that still keep telling the story, but make sure that we've got that wow type product experience.
Oh, of course. So I know you have core values in your organization, but so does EO Nashville. And I like to repeat the 4 core values of EO. And I would like you to comment on one of the 4, whatever one most resonates. And here they are: trust and respect, thirst for learning, think big, be bold. And the next one is together we grow. Which one resonates with you?
It's like saying which one of my 4 kids is my favorite child, Robert. I mean, I love them all, but one of my personal mantras is go big or go home. And I don't want to lose my home. So the one that really resonates there is, think big, be bold.
Mm.
And, we're pursuing the road less traveled. There's a reason why 97% of brands go overseas, because it's a lot more cost effective. There's a lot of, synergies available, but, being big, being bold, say, although only 3% do it, there's an opportunity for us to really make a difference. There's an opportunity to create American jobs. And, that's one thing that really resonates to me, that ties to one of those values from EO.
Mm. So how are you going big?
So what I want to do, Robert, is I mentioned my 4 kids. My oldest daughter, for example, is not even dating. But I want to build this iconic American brand so that 20 years from now, that when she has her child and they're sitting on my lap and they're saying, "Grandpa, that's your brand, you built it, you and the team, and everyone came together." I mean, to me, that would be something that would be truly impactful. Talk about wanting to leave a legacy. The whole idea around building this brand and doing it the right way and building an incredible team, because we could have a whole segment talking about our team and why I'm here right now based on the team that we have in place. But to me, that would be something that would be incredibly impactful, that ties into that be big, be bold.
Oh, beautiful. Dean, thank you for joining me. Listen, if you are an entrepreneur here in Nashville, Tennessee, did you know there's a place called EO? And you can visit us at eonashville.com. There are 350 entrepreneurs that get together every single month into a small form setting to talk about what's working, what's not. And you can have some support. And that's what we do here in EO Nashville. We have a community. It's available for you. If you are interested, go visit eonashville.com and come to one of our new member events. We would love to have you come visit. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thanks for listening to the Decision Podcast by Nashville EO. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.